Welcome to another episode of Executive Health and Life. I'm your host, Julian Hayes II, back at it again. Thank you for joining me for another episode. Thank you for tuning in for another episode for those who are going to catch this live in the future and those who are going to listen to it months down the road. Thank you again. And let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. It'll be short and quick, but nevertheless very effective. So in today's episode, we're discussing a common side effect of the executive life, the business life, the entrepreneurial life. You know, when it's, I should say, whether you're working on a serious C round, a potential nine figure exit, taking your company public, building your business from the ground up, and now you have team members. You have these people to think of now. And it's not just those team members, because some of those team members have families. So you have the families also as your responsibility. And or you can just be a person who's on the path to rising up the ranks into a potential C-suite position. Oftentimes in each of those scenarios, stress is the thing that's going to accompany you. Stress is the thing that's going to be there with you side by side. It's going to be there with you as you're going to bed at night, as you wake up in the morning. That stress, that pressure, that worrying, a lot of that will be there with you. Now, let's not paint a complete negative picture. You can experience some highs within your business, within your company, but you can most definitely experience some lows, experience, some pressure filled moments. Stress is oftentimes dubbed this silent executive killer. Stress is bad. And there's so many books out there, so many articles where we talk about stress is bad and all these things about stress. But stress is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's all perspective. It's all about how you handle it, how you control it. Managing stress is not only paramount for your business, your performance, your productivity, but it's a pivotal aspect in determining the rate at that you're going to age. One of the key things that can really accelerate your aging clock, and we see this on the biological reports that we get back, is stress. How you handle stress. You can literally age yourself rapidly with stress. And I think about this as stress was already an issue for many business owners and executives. And over the last few years, the way in which work is being done now, the whole workplace, the culture has changed. And so an extra layer has been added to leaders in these positions. And so I did a little digging and I found a report by the Oracle and Workplace Intelligence that surveyed 12,000 workers, including HR leaders and C suite executives across 11 countries. And they found that 53% of C suite executives struggled with mental health issues in the workplace, compared to 45% of employees who said the same. And I like to think you can just add this. So even if you're thinking, well, I don't have all these employees right now, odds are you're still stressing because the journey of being a founder, a solopreneur, that's a pretty stressful thing because you're literally bootstrapping everything from the ground up. You you don't have any funding. So that's a pretty stressful endeavor as well. And I don't have the numbers in my head, but when it comes to entrepreneurship, 2 to 3 times more likely to have some sort of mental situation issue that you're dealing with, whether it's with anxiety, depression, and a whole host of other things. That's the side of entrepreneurship, rising up the ranks in the company that they don't talk about. Success, a lot of times, is often glorified, and we don't see the dark sides of success, the paradoxes of success. We only get the feel good stuff. So, another thing here is according to Mayo Clinic data, the executive life leads to less sleep, more work hours, struggles with work life balance, frequent travel, and sedentary lifestyle. That makes sense. So these factors put executives at a greater risk for sleep deprivation, heart disease, depression, stroke, and diabetes. This is studied in the Mayo Clinic. It's also common sense that you would expect as well, because very few people have optimal cardiometabolic health. So, with all this said, as I said before, stress is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's the unmitigated stress that becomes a detriment. There's a positive and there's a negative stress. And so it's with this in mind that I'm going to take today's episode and approach stress a little differently, just to give you something a little different to think about, to kind of open your mind up to think about stress in a much more expansive manner than a lot of times we do now. So, the very first thing is when you think about stress, it's helpful to think about a concept called allostatic load. And so, allostatic load, think of this as a health outcome. And this is going to represent the way that all your stressors combine to impact your health and overall physiology and pretty much your entire human system. This is the entire cumulative effect of stress on your body and mind. And this is the so you have a system here, and I say this a lot. So this allostatic load, the everyday living that you go through, there's different forms of stressors, and some of us have more than others, and that amount is going to load up and essentially start to affect our body on a cellular level. But let's dive into these 6 types real quick. And the very first one to talk about is none other than mental stress. This is probably the most common type of stress that when people are discussing stress, this is the one that they're referring to, even if they don't use the word. So our psychology can oftentimes serve as this main culprit to various physical ailments that we are going through, relational problems that then lead to affecting our job performance, that lead to us, when it comes to job performance, affecting not only our individual work, but the way that we relate to people, our leadership abilities, our managerial abilities, our emotional intelligence is oftentimes compromised as well when we are stressed from a psychological mental standpoint. And so when your mental side is operating though at its top peak capacity, you're highly alert, you're focused, you're competent on your job and your responsibilities, and quite frankly, you are probably a better person to be around. And you're also it's easier to learn and retain information along with solving problems. And solving problems is actually one, and putting out fires is one of your chief responsibilities. So this is a good thing to have. Now, some of the signs though of mental stress and lower functioning in this area includes decisional fatigue, information overload, perfectionism, and this scattered thinking where you're just foggy. You just don't feel sharp. That's the best way to put it. When I have felt this category of stress really hamper me down, it's really been it's just been hard to focus for me. And like when I sat down to write, or when I sat down to record a video, or even when I sat down to have a conversation with a client, or even do a podcast interview, it requires more effort to stay on task to get the job done. So one action here that can help you, and it will be beneficial for a lot of people, is to delegate. And I'm sure you're delegating now. You're like, okay, I delegate now. I have people on my team do X and X responsibility. But I'm not just talking about from a work perspective here. I'm actually talking about delegation from a health perspective. Delegation is beneficial because it helps you free up this mental energy. Delegation is beneficial for your brain, essentially, as if you think of your brain, you think of your energy as this iPhone battery or Android battery. And let's say you start the day at 100%, but every time you have to make a decision, every time you have to focus on something, this is taking away precious energy from that battery. So a lot of times we have so many minor, small decisions that is clouding our judgment, clouding our minds right now. that when it comes time to make major decisions, to really get into deep work, our battery is already in the red or it's getting close to the red. So, one thing to do here is to delegate, 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 delegate. And this is going to free up your mental energy. This is going to help you with more important decisions revolving around your company, your people, and the people within your personal life. Delegation from a health standpoint looks like opting for meal delivery services if you need that, opting for a personal trainer if you need that, a nutritionist, a health team, um, a community, accountability, whatever it is that you need there, and you can decide that. That's a way to help you delegate so you can focus on what you do best. And I say that because, especially when it comes to the people in your personal life and being there actually present, it's one thing to be around those personal relationships compared to just being present and compared. So, going to the next one here. This is going to be emotional stress. And so, if everything starts with our thoughts, then the next area down the line is going to be the feelings. And a better way to think about this is through your emotions. So, waking up each day and following your plan, this is easy when you're optimistic. When you're free of stress, the economy is booming, team members and partners are all happy. You have very few distractions. This sounds like a perfect utopia, but let's be honest though. How often will this be the case? Not too often. I can think of very few days where everything is just perfectly seeming aligned. There's no fires to put out. There's nothing that goes off schedule. None of that. Very few days. And I'm sure you are the same as well. So if you only can perform and be in control of your health and your energy when everything is going well, then you're going to reach the end of this year and every subsequent year afterwards. You're going to be disappointed. Success and exponential growth, exponential growth with your health, along with many other facets, these are forged from the rough moments of your life. Some of the typical emotional stressors that we can experience are anger, grief, shame, fear, embarrassment, catastrophizing events, and many others. So a key habit that I, have implemented and has been beneficial for others and I learned from other people, mentors and stuff, is to create some sort of plan. Create like a emotional blueprint, a emotional playbook. So when things get physically, mentally, and emotionally difficult, when you find yourself and your emotions wavering, what's the game plan to get yourself back in equilibrium? What's the game plan to take back control of your emotions? So point 3, existential stress. So sometimes you ever find yourself, you're on the exterior, life is going well, business is good, fitness is good, relationships are good. You're respected in the marketplace, you have prestige, you have status, but you just can't put your finger around it. Something's off, and you just don't know. You just know something's off. It's this feeling that you have that something is off. And this is what you call existential stress. This is hard to pinpoint, and it's harder at times to even explain because this is something that's not tangible. This is something that you cannot measure. Data doesn't track this, unfortunately. So, with the existential stress, there's a sense of hopelessness, there's despair, there's lack of meaning, and there's a general sense of emptiness. This pillar of stress has the most variety, though, in terms of how you can take back control. For me, a few things that I do is I journal daily to kind of get things out of my head, to kind of see where my thinking is going. I browse some of my favorite sites, showing a combination of things and experiences that are meaningful to me, that inspire me, that motivate me. And I also remind myself of why the work that I do, the habits that I do, the actions, the decisions that I make, the things I choose to say no to, the projects that I'm involved in, the projects that I choose to take on, the projects that I choose not to take on. I remind myself why they are important to me, first and foremost. And then I think about what's at stake. What's the stakes if I don't complete this? What's the stakes the benefit if I do complete this? Who else is going to benefit besides me? Because a lot of times we will do things for other people that we wouldn't even do for ourselves. So it's good to think about everyone else who positively benefits from you. There are no right or wrong answers here. Some people are very inspired by being the person now that could spark and change many generations that come after. Not even just from a uh, like a financial standpoint, but even from a health standpoint. That's the beautiful thing of epigenetics is that you can positively influence 2 to 3 generations that come after you. So the only thing that matters here is that it makes sense to you and that it gives you energy. One of the most longevity pillars is having a sense of purpose, a mission to your day, a rhyme and reason for why you do things. So, pillar number 4 is environmental stress. So, we've heard ad nauseum about our environments, but this is often only spoken in the context, in the lens of the people that you surround yourself with. Now, this is important. It's very important. But you can also factor in various vices and temptations that also appear here as well, which we'll even go into further detail on the next pillar in those things. But more importantly, with the environment, I'm thinking about invisible influencers, such as the air quality that you have around you, the temperature in terms of going to sleep at night and how that can affect you. Because then, if you don't get quality sleep because the temperature is maybe too warm, that sleep quality decreases, which then leads to your system being a little more stressed or not being as resilient the next day. Think about smells, sounds, toxins, light, and pollutants. These can all affect you. Some more than others, obviously. And some people, though, and I should say some more than others, are less equipped to handle these various toxins that this world offers. And that's due to our genetics. We have different genetics when it comes to our detox capabilities. So you can fortify your system through learning your unique genetic makeup and supplementing. One of my favorites here is glutathione, but I like topical forms with that, not really the capsules. I don't think it's too effective. So, point number 5 is social stress. So, this one is highly underrated. We know the stress that relationships can bring rejection, dealing with many different types of personality on a daily basis. But for many high performers and leaders at the top, along with those who have ambitious aspirations to climb the ladder, sometimes you can get lucky. I mean, not lucky. Well, I think it's lucky to be blessed with that. But um, sometimes you can get lonely. That's where I was getting at. It can be lonely. And I read a fascinating book on this subject, along with interviewing Nick Johnson on executive loneliness. He wrote a very good book on this. I interviewed him um, a couple of months ago, so it's a little bit down in the archives. Very fascinating episode. So loneliness is very much so a health epidemic. In particular, executive loneliness is a health epidemic that we need to pay attention to and that we cannot afford to overlook. This can lead to so many destructive things that it doesn't just affect us, it affects everyone around us and our company, obviously. Loneliness and the feeling of isolation that can happen as you climb this ladder of success, and you're ambitious, and it's becoming harder to relate with the people around you if you don't have the right people around you. This can lead to many addictive and poor outlets for releasing this stress, this pent up feelings that you have inside. This could be alcohol, sex, pornography, food, and so many others. Loneliness, surprisingly, and I was surprised when I read this, and people are very surprised when they hear this. Loneliness, the feeling of being lonely chronically, is a highly inflammatory thing. So, one of the best things you can do is to start to form your wolf pack. Seek out people who are like you, seek out people who can relate to you, who are similar with you. No one succeeds alone. I have to remind myself of this. I have to remind myself to get off the island. I prefer to be a lone wolf. I prefer to be alone most of the time. But Success is a team sport, and a friend reminded me this. He reminds me all the time. He shared this with me years ago, and it has stuck with me that success is not a solo sport, it's a team sport. So, our last stressor is physical stress. So, this one is probably the most abused. And I know it's the most abused for me. Some of the signs of physical stress, too much physical stress in this category, is routinely poor sleep, both in a quantity and a quality standpoint. Overtraining leading to injuries, a depleted immune system. You catch colds, stomach bugs here and there, and the timetable to come back from these things, you bouncing back slower. Overall, you simply have a lower resistance and you have lower resiliency, which is not ideal. And so if you're going to push the pedal with no signs of taking your foot off the pedal, firstly, join the club. I am not one of those people who believe in just doing the minimal to get by. I really enjoy pushing things, going for more. But if you're like me, which you probably are, one of the things that we must do, and I'm talking to myself first and foremost, is we have to dedicate extra time to regeneration and recovery. And this firstly starts with sleep. It is the most important key here. But also, don't overlook your overall flexibility and your mobility. Supplements also can play a key role here in terms of helping to boost your recovery and your overall immune system. If you are doing a lot of endurance work and a lot of excessive training, it's causing a lot of oxidative stress. You can mitigate that. Sometimes it might deplete your immune system. You can mitigate that. Everything is figure outable. Everything has an answer. You just have to take time to do it. So you can look into float tanks, you can look into saunas, yoga, various types of massages, cold therapy, so many more things that you can do, all with the goal of bringing yourself into more of an equilibrium state, more of your form of balance in terms of hard training, pushing things to the metal, keeping your foot on the gas pedal, and then your recovery. So, with all this said, these are the 6 various types of stressors to be on the lookout for. And just to quickly highlight them again, we had mental stress, emotional stress, existential stress, environmental stress, social stress, and lastly, physical stress. Odds are, though, we have a little of each of these going on, some more than others. But if you stop and think about it, one of these will likely be more glaring than the other. And that's your sign, that's your cue to place your focus on. So as I wrap this up, I don't mention it that much, but I wrote a guide about how to become an optimal executive. Become the individual who is the CEO of your health and life. So it's discussing 17 simple and impactful actions that you can take to look, to feel, and stay at the top of your game. Most importantly, make this thing they call aging irrelevant, along with maintaining your edge and status. And so you can go to executivehealth.io/report for those driving, running, doing any activity right now. I will have the link in the comments as well in the show notes so you can click and get your guide as well. So until the next time, stay awesome, be limitless, and as always, go be the CEO of your health in your life. Peace.